Karen Wilcox's high-pitched scream pierced the peaceful Sunday morning as she spotted a single brown leaf floating in the Hendersons' pool. She marched across their perfectly manicured lawn in her crisp white capri pants and baby blue polo shirt with Sycamore Heights HOA president embroidered on the chest. The neighbors peeking through their blinds knew exactly what was coming. "Excuse me." Karen rapped her manicured nails against the Hendersons' door. "This is the third violation this month. Do you want the entire neighborhood's property values to plummet?" Tom Henderson opened the door with a cup of coffee in hand, still in his bathrobe. He purchased the corner lot in Sycamore Heights for its privacy, never expecting the HOA president would conduct surprise pool inspections at 8:30 a.m. on weekends. "Good morning to you too, Karen," Tom said, forcing a smile. "What seems to be the problem today?" Karen thrust her phone toward his face, showing a zoom-in photo of the offending leaf. Section 12, paragraph 3 of our bylaws clearly states that all water features must be maintained in pristine condition at all times. This is unacceptable. Tom sighed. "I'll get my net." "See that you do, and your hedges are a quarter-inch above regulation. I'll be sending an official notice this afternoon." Karen pivoted on her heel, nearly tripping over Tom's sprinkler head. "And this is improperly placed. Another violation?" As Karen strutted away, Tom noticed several neighbors giving him sympathetic glances from their windows and porches. Everyone in Sycamore Heights had a Karen story. Across the street, Lisa Chen watched the scene unfold while watering her meticulously regulation-compliant rosebushes. Last month, Karen had cited Lisa for ethnically divergent decor when she hung traditional red lanterns for Lunar New Year. The ensuing community meeting had been tense, with Karen insisting she was just maintaining neighborhood aesthetics. Karen's reign of terror had begun 3 years ago when she narrowly won the HOA presidency by scheduling the election meeting on the same night as the town's high school championship football game. With just 12 residents in attendance, 8 of them her bridge club friends, she'd secured her position and had been making everyone's lives miserable ever since. Back in her own immaculate colonial-style home, Karen logged the Henderson violation into her prize spreadsheet. Her husband, Walter, barely looked up from his newspaper, having learned long ago that engaging only encouraged her. Karen's home office walls were covered with neighborhood maps, regulation printouts, and photos documenting various infractions. "Did you see Mrs. Abernathy's garbage can? Still visible from the street at 7:05 p.m. yesterday," Karen said, typing furiously. "And the Rodriguez family installed a basketball hoop without approval. I've already contacted our attorney." Walter mumbled something non-committal, turning the page of his newspaper. Karen didn't notice his indifference, too focused on her next target. The Johnsons had submitted a request to paint their front door navy blue instead of the approved forest green. She smiled as she prepared her denial letter, relishing the authority her position gave her. What Karen didn't know was that the residents of Sycamore Heights had finally had enough. Secret meetings were being held in the Rodriguez basement, plans were being made, and Tom Henderson, whose pool had just been cited for harboring a single leaf, was their unlikely leader. The basement of the Rodriguez home buzzed with hushed conversations as 26 Sycamore Heights residents squeezed between storage boxes and exercise equipment. Tom Henderson stood beside a whiteboard where he'd written Operation Take Back Sycamore. "First, let's review Karen's greatest hits," Tom said, flipping to a chart detailing HOA violations over the past year. 312 citations, 62 denied improvement requests, and 14 threats of legal action. Lisa Chen raised her hand. She made the Johnson family remove their son's memorial tree because it wasn't on the approved vegetation list. Gasps echoed through the room. Even those who'd heard the story before couldn't believe Karen's cruelty. "And don't forget the Williams family," added elderly Mr. Greenberg from the back. Their wheelchair ramp request was denied for 6 months until they threatened an ADA lawsuit. Tom nodded grimly. "The annual HOA election is next month. We need someone to run against her." The room fell silent. Karen's vindictiveness was legendary. Whoever challenged her would face relentless scrutiny and harassment. "I'll do it," said Maria Rodriguez, standing up. "My family has lived here for 15 years. I have a background in community organizing, and frankly, my husband's already installed that basketball hoop without approval. What more can she do to us?" The group erupted in applause, quickly hushed by Tom, who pointed upward, reminding them that Karen had eyes and ears everywhere. The next morning, Karen noticed unusual activity in the neighborhood. Residents were talking to each other in driveways. People waved at one another while collecting mail. Something was happening, and Karen hadn't authorized it. She grabbed her violation documentation kit, a designer tote containing her camera, citation forms, and measuring tape, and began her daily patrol. As she rounded the corner onto Magnolia Lane, she spotted Maria Rodriguez hanging a campaign poster in her front window. "Rodriguez for HOA president, community, not control." Karen's face flushed crimson. She marched up the Rodriguez driveway, smartphone in hand, ready to document this clear violation of Section 8, Paragraph 2, no signage visible from public right-of-way except for standardized security system notifications. "Good morning, Karen," Maria called out cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "That sign is against regulations," Karen sputtered, unable to maintain her usual composed demeanor. Maria smiled pleasantly. "Actually, I reviewed our bylaws thoroughly. Political signs related to HOA elections are specifically exempted under the 2019 amendment. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a goldfish gasping for air. Maria was right. Karen herself had added that exemption when she'd run for re-election, never imagining anyone would dare challenge her. "Well," Karen finally managed, her voice tight, "your garden hose is improperly stored. That will be a $50 fine." "I look forward to discussing that at the next meeting," Maria replied, still smiling. "By the way, I'm proposing a community garden in the vacant lot by the playground. Several families have expressed interest." Karen's eye twitched. Community gardens meant unsightly vegetables and residents congregating without supervision. "That will never be approved." "We'll let the homeowners decide," Maria said, waving as a neighbor drove by and honked supportively. Karen retreated to her home, immediately calling an emergency meeting of her loyal board members, all 5 of whom owed their positions to her. As they gathered in her living room, Karen paced frantically. "We need to shut this down immediately," she declared. "Rodriguez is proposing changes that will destroy everything we've built." Walter brought in a tray of lemonade, nodding politely to the board members. "Perhaps some competition would be healthy for the community," he suggested quietly. Karen shot him a glare that could have frozen the swimming pool that Tom Henderson had finally cleaned that morning. "Walter, please. This is HOA business." What Karen didn't realize was that Walter had secretly attended the basement meeting at the Rodriguez house. After 15 years of living with Karen's obsession, even he had reached his breaking point. Karen woke at 5:30 a.m., a full hour earlier than her usual routine. She hadn't slept well, plagued by nightmares of community gardens overrun with wildflowers and homes painted in unapproved color schemes. The Rodriguez campaign had gained momentum over the past week, with lawn signs popping up across Sycamore Heights like dandelions, invasive and impossible to eliminate. She peered through her bedroom curtains and gasped. Overnight, 3 more houses on her street had displayed Rodriguez signs. Even worse, Mrs. Abernathy, whom Karen had personally approved for the landscape committee, had a "Time for Change" banner hanging from her porch. "Walter, are you seeing this?" Karen turned, but Walter's side of the bed was empty. A note on his pillow read, "Early golf game. Don't wait up." Karen frowned. Walter never played golf on Wednesdays. Something wasn't right. After dressing in her official HOA polo and khakis, Karen decided to implement her emergency containment protocol. She created it years ago for situations exactly like this. Resident uprisings had happened twice before during her presidency, though never with such coordination. Her first stop was the home of Gerald Fisher, the HOA's treasurer and her most loyal ally. Gerald kept financial records that documented every homeowner's payment history, and Karen knew exactly how to use this information. "Morning, Gerald," Karen said briskly as he opened his door in his bathrobe. "We need to review the Rodriguez payment history immediately." Gerald shifted uncomfortably. "Karen, I don't think." Section 4, Paragraph 7 clearly states that candidates must be in good financial standing. There must be something we can use. Gerald sighed. "Karen, they've never been late. Not once in 15 years. And even if they had been, using financial records that way would be." "Would be what, Gerald?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Illegal," came a voice from behind Gerald. His wife Susan appeared, coffee mug in hand. "And as a certified public accountant, I've advised my husband not to engage in such activities." Karen stepped back, stunned by this betrayal. "I see the Rodriguez campaign has gotten to you too." The next 3 hours unfolded like a nightmare as Karen drove through the neighborhood, stopping at the homes of each board member. At each house, she encountered reluctance, excuses, or outright refusal to help torpedo Maria's campaign. By noon, Karen sat alone in her car outside the community center, breathing heavily. She needed to regroup. The annual pool opening was scheduled for Saturday, just 3 days away. As HOA president, she was responsible for the inspection and official opening ceremony. Perhaps there was an opportunity there. Later that afternoon, Karen let herself into the pool area with her master key. The maintenance company had finished the seasonal preparation yesterday. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Karen glanced around, ensuring she was alone, then discreetly adjusted the pool's temperature controls, setting them 15 degrees higher than regulation. By Saturday, the pool would be uncomfortably warm, and as chair of the event, Maria Rodriguez would take the blame. As Karen left, she didn't notice Tom Henderson sitting in his car across the street, watching through binoculars. Tom immediately called Maria. She's up to something at the pool, be reported. I couldn't see exactly what, but she was fiddling with the equipment shed. Maria thanked him and made a few calls of her own. That evening, Karen hosted her weekly bridge club, the last 4 women in the neighborhood still loyal to her. As they played, Karen outlined her concerns about the Rodriguez campaign. Did you know she wants to reduce violation fines by 50%? Karen said, playing a trump card with flourish, and she's proposing quarterly community potlucks. Can you imagine the health code violations? The women exchanged glances but said nothing. Well, Karen prompted, isn't that concerning? Bethany Williams, whose family have struggled with the wheelchair ramp approval, cleared her throat. Actually, Karen, I've been meaning to tell you, I won't be able to attend bridge club anymore. My Thursday evenings are now committed to another activity. One by one, the other women made similar excuses. Within minutes, Karen sat alone at her bridge table, the cards scattered before her like the pieces of her crumbling kingdom. Outside, Walter sat in his car 2 blocks away, not playing golf at all. He was on the phone with Tom Henderson, finalizing plans for Saturday's confrontation at the pool opening. For the first time in years, Walter felt alive again, part of a community rather than just Karen's silent shadow. Saturday morning arrived with perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze, ideal conditions for the Sycamore Heights pool opening. Karen stood before her bathroom mirror, applying an extra layer of waterproof mascara. Today was more than a community event, it was her opportunity to reassert control. She'd selected her outfit carefully. A designer swimsuit covered by a coordinating caftan, both in Sycamore Heights' official colors of forest green and gold. Her HOA president badge was polished to a high shine, and she prepared a 5-page speech about community standards and the importance of vigilance in maintaining property values. You look nice, Walter commented as he passed the bathroom, dressed casually in shorts and a t-shirt. I'll meet you there. Need to stop by Tom's house first to help him with something. Karen's head snapped up. Tom Henderson? Since when are you friends with Tom Henderson? Walter shrugged. He's been giving me golf tips. See you at the pool. Before Karen could interrogate him further, Walter was gone. She frowned at her reflection. Something was definitely amiss, but she couldn't worry about Walter's sudden social life now. She had a pool temperature crisis to manage. When Karen arrived at the community pool 30 minutes early, she was shocked to find the parking lot already full. Residents milled about with coolers and beach bags, chatting and laughing. A banner hung over the entrance, Sycamore Heights Community Pool Opening. Everyone welcome. Karen had specifically dictated that the banner should read Sycamore Heights HOA Regulated Pool Facility, residents only. This unauthorized change was just the beginning of her dismay. Inside the gate, Maria Rodriguez directed a team of volunteers setting up a refreshment table with homemade cookies and lemonade. Children helped place colorful pool noodles and beach balls in a community toy bin. Another unauthorized addition. Excuse me, Karen said, approaching Maria with her most authoritative stride. As HOA president, I did not approve these modifications to the opening ceremony procedure. Maria smiled warmly. Good morning, Karen. The board approved these changes at yesterday's emergency session. Didn't Gerald tell you? Emergency session? What emergency session? It's all in the minutes, Maria replied, handing Karen a printed document. We needed to address the pool temperature issue. Karen's stomach dropped. What pool temperature issue? Someone tampered with the controls, setting them dangerously high. Thankfully, Tom Henderson noticed during his morning walk and alerted the maintenance company. They'd fixed it just in time. Maria's eyes held Karen's steadily. The security cameras caught everything. Karen's mouth went dry. Security cameras? There are no security cameras at the pool. There are now. The board approved their installation last week. It's in the minutes from Tuesday's meeting. Karen snatched the papers from Maria's hand, scanning them frantically. There it was in black and white. Approval for pool security cameras, with Gerald's signature alongside the other board members. The timestamp on the approval was Wednesday morning, right after she'd visited Gerald's house. This is, Karen stuttered. A safeguard for our community, Maria finished for her. We all want Sycamore Heights to be secure and well-maintained. The pool area continued filling with residents. Karen noticed Tom Henderson setting up a projector and screen near the deep end. Walter stood beside him, helping to connect cables to a laptop. What's that for? Karen demanded, pointing at the equipment. Movie night after the swim session, Maria explained. The children voted for Finding Nemo. Movie night? That's against regulation. The noise ordinance clearly states. We got a special permit from the city, interrupted Lisa Chen, appearing with a tray of watermelon slices. It's all perfectly legal. Karen's head swam. She'd lost control of not just the election campaign, but her entire HOA empire. As she stood paralyzed with shock, the official opening time arrived. Traditionally, the HOA president gave a speech and then ceremoniously dipped a toe in the water to declare the pool open. Maria gently guided Karen toward the microphone set up near the pool's edge. "Everyone's waiting for your speech, Karen." Karen looked out at the gathered community, faces she'd cited, fined, and reprimanded for years. But instead of resentment, she saw something unexpected, hopeful anticipation. They were giving her a chance to be part of this new community spirit. For a fleeting moment, Karen considered embracing the change. Then she noticed Walter standing with Tom, both men looking at her with knowing expressions. Her pride surged back like a tidal wave as HOA president. Karen began, gripping the microphone tightly. "I must inform you that." Furthermore, Karen continued, her voice rising as she clutched the microphone. "I'm documenting each violation and will be issuing fines accordingly. The unauthorized refreshments, the unapproved banner, and the illegal toy bin." The microphone suddenly cut out. Karen tapped it, then glared at Tom Henderson, who stood innocently by the electrical box. "As I was saying," Karen shouted, determined to be heard, "this event is canceled." Gerald Fisher stepped forward, clearing his throat nervously. "Actually, Karen, according to HOA bylaws, events can only be canceled by a majority board vote or in case of safety emergencies." Karen's face flushed crimson. "This is a safety emergency. The pool temperature has been corrected and certified safe by the maintenance company." Gerald finished, holding up an official-looking document. "We have the paperwork right here." Maria gently took Karen's arm, guiding her away from the center of attention as children began lining up for the traditional first swim. "Karen, why don't we talk privately for a moment?" Karen yanked her arm away. "I don't need to talk. I need to be respected. I've given everything to this community. Everything. Do you know how many hours I've spent measuring hedge heights and documenting garbage can violations? Do you?" The pool area had fallen silent, everyone watching the confrontation unfold. Even the children sensed the tension, pressing against their parents' legs. Maria spoke softly. "Karen, nobody's questioning your dedication, but an HOA should bring people together, not drive them apart." "You know nothing about running an HOA," Karen spat. "Without strict enforcement, this neighborhood would descend into chaos. Pink flamingos on lawns, basketball hoops in driveways, wind chimes disturbing the peace." From the back of the crowd, Mrs. Greenberg, the oldest resident of Sycamore Heights, shuffled forward with her cane. "When my late husband and I moved here 30 years ago, before any HOA existed, this was the friendliest neighborhood in the county. We have flamingos and basketball hoops and, yes, wind chimes. We also had block parties and progressive dinners and neighbors who helped each other." Karen rolled her eyes. "Times have changed, Mrs. Greenberg. Property values are actually higher in neighborhoods where people want to live," interrupted Tom Henderson, stepping forward with his laptop. "I've done the research. Communities with moderate HOA enforcement and strong social engagement have better resale values than those with punitive enforcement policies." He turned the screen toward the crowd, displaying charts and graphs. Walter nodded appreciatively at the data, avoiding Karen's accusatory glare. Karen felt her control slipping away with each passing second. She needed to reassert her authority dramatically. Her gaze fell on the sparkling pool water. "If this event is proceeding against my wishes," she announced loudly, then as HOA president, "I will be the first to officially test the water." Before anyone could respond, Karen dropped her kaftan, revealing her designer swimsuit, and strode purposefully toward the diving board. Climbing the ladder with dignity, she stood tall at the end of the board, hands on hips, surveying her domain. "I hereby declare this pool," Karen began, but suddenly noticed Walter, Tom, and several other residents exchanging worried glances and urgent whispers. Something was wrong. "What?" she demanded. "What are you all whispering about?" Maria stepped forward. "Karen, please come down. The maintenance company rebalanced the chemicals after fixing the temperature issue, but they recommended waiting another hour before." "Oh, please," Karen scoffed. "Another delay tactic. I'm not falling for it." With that, she bounced once on the diving board and executed what she considered a perfect dive into the water. As she surfaced, Karen immediately realized her mistake. The chemical balance was indeed off, dramatically so. The water had an unusual slippery quality, and to her horror, she watched as her carefully applied waterproof mascara began streaming down her cheeks. Worse still, the designer swimsuit, guaranteed colorfast by the manufacturer, was reacting to the elevated chlorine levels. The forest green fabric was rapidly developing peculiar orange splotches. Karen shrieked, frantically swimming toward the ladder. Walter hurried over, offering a towel as she emerged from the pool looking like a Halloween decoration. Orange-spotted suit, raccoon eyes, and hair plastered to her head. "I tried to warn you," he said softly. "The chemicals need time to stabilize." Karen grabbed the towel, wrapping it around herself as laughter, quickly stifled but unmistakable, rippled through the crowd. She'd never been so humiliated in all her years as HOA president. This was deliberate, she hissed, glaring at Maria, Tom, and the entire community. You all, this isn't over, Karen declared, mascara still streaming down her face. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Every single person involved in this disaster will be held accountable. With that final threat, she stormed out of the pool area, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. After a moment, children's laughter resumed, and the community gradually returned to their celebration, albeit with an undercurrent of concern about Karen's next move. Walter approached Maria and Tom, his expression troubled. I should go after her. Give her some space, Tom advised. I've never seen her this upset. Maria nodded in agreement. She needs time to process everything. This can't be easy for her. Walter sighed, glancing toward the exit where his wife had disappeared. You don't understand. When Karen feels cornered, she escalates. She's probably already on the phone with the HOA's attorney. Tom and Maria exchanged worried looks. They had planned for many contingencies, but not a full legal battle. Meanwhile, Karen drove home with shaking hands, tears of humiliation blurring her vision. Her perfect community, her perfect reputation, her perfect control, all crumbling before her eyes. She pulled into her driveway and rushed inside, heading straight for her home office. Karen's office was her command center, walls covered with neighborhood maps and regulation printouts. She dropped into her chair, ignoring the orange stains her wet swimsuit left on the leather, and pulled out the HOA's legal folder. Inside was the contract with Sycamore Heights law firm Blackwell and Schmidt, who had helped her enforce countless violations over the years. She dialed the senior partner's number, not caring that it was Saturday. This was an emergency. James Blackwell, answered a gruff voice. James, it's Karen Wilcox. I need you to prepare injunctions against the entire HOA board for Monday morning. They staged a coup. A long pause followed. Karen, what exactly happened? For the next 15 minutes, Karen detailed the outrageous betrayals she'd endured, the unauthorized pool party, the security cameras that caught her adjusting the temperature controls, the chemical imbalance that ruined her designer swimsuit. With each recounted offense, her voice grew shriller. When she finally finished, James cleared his throat. Karen, I need to be straight with you. None of what you've described constitutes a legitimate legal claim against the board. In fact, what? Karen demanded. The temperature tampering could potentially be construed as vandalism or reckless endangerment, depending on how high you set it. Karen gasped. Are you refusing to represent me? I'm advising you, as both your attorney and someone who's worked with you for years, to take a step back and consider your position carefully. The call ended with Karen slamming the phone down, feeling betrayed yet again. Even her attorney had abandoned her. She sat in silence for several minutes, then turned to her computer. If legal action wouldn't work, she'd try another approach. Karen logged into the HOA's website administration panel and began typing a scathing announcement detailing the safety violations at the pool opening and the conspiracy against her. Just as she hit publish, a notification popped up, access denied. Administrator privileges revoked. What? Karen shrieked, trying again with the same result. Somehow she'd been locked out of the HOA website she personally designed and maintained for years. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Gerald. Emergency board vote this morning removed your administrative access due to concerns about system misuse. Details in your email. Karen switched to her email, finding a formal message from the board explaining that due to pattern of concerning behavior and potential conflicts of interest, her access to HOA digital systems had been temporarily suspended pending review. She slumped in her chair, the magnitude of the rebellion finally sinking in. This wasn't just about the pool opening or Maria's campaign. The entire community had turned against her. Outside, the sound of splashing and laughter drifted from the direction of the community pool. Karen moved to her bedroom window, which offered a distant view of the pool area. Families were swimming, children playing, neighbors chatting, all without her supervision, without her rules, without her. For the first time in years, Karen felt utterly powerless. Her carefully constructed world of regulations and enforcement was disintegrating, and she had no idea how to stop it. The front door opened and closed. Walter was home. Karen, he called out hesitantly. She didn't answer, remaining at the window, watching the community she no longer controlled. Walter appeared in the doorway, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. We need to talk. Karen turned from the window, mascara stains still streaking her face. There's nothing to talk about. You've clearly chosen your Sid. Walter closed the bedroom door behind him and pulled up the chair from Karen's vanity. It's not about sides, Karen. It's about what's happening to you. To us, what's happening is a coordinated attack on everything I've built. Karen's voice cracked with emotion. 3 years of perfect enforcement, pristine common areas, and property values up 12%. And this is the thanks I get. Walter shook his head sadly. When was the last time you enjoyed living here? actually enjoyed it, not just the power of running it. The question caught Karen off guard. She opened her mouth to respond but found no ready answer. "Remember when we first moved in?" Walter continued. "You were so excited about the neighborhood potlucks and the holiday decorating contests. You wanted to join the garden club. That was before I understood what it takes to maintain standards," Karen replied defensively. "Someone has to make the hard decisions. The hard decision to deny the Williams family a wheelchair ramp, the hard decision to find the paddles for their Diwali decorations, the hard decision to measure everyone's grass with a ruler every Tuesday." Karen flinched. "You don't understand the pressure. Once you start making exceptions, the whole system falls apart." Walter leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm going to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. I've been keeping track. In the past year, you've issued citations to every single home in Sycamore Heights except one. That's because people constantly break the rules. Every home except ours, Karen, and do you know what? Our hedges are 3/4 of an inch above regulation height on the east side. Our mailbox is slightly discolored on the bottom from lawn sprinkler water. The decorative rock in our front garden isn't on the approved materials list." Karen stared at him in disbelief. "That's not possible. I would have noticed." "You didn't notice because you didn't want to. You've been enforcing rules selectively, Karen, and people have had enough." The words hung in the air between them. Deep down, Karen knew there was truth to what Walter was saying, but admitting it felt like surrendering everything she'd worked for. "So what am I supposed to do?" she finally asked, her voice small. "Just let Maria take over while everyone celebrates my downfall." Walter sighed. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about finding a way to be part of the community again instead of just policing it." A notification chimed on Karen's phone. It was an email from Tom Henderson, addressed to all Sycamore Heights residents. The subject line read, "Community Meeting, Sunday 2 p.m. Important HOA discussions." Karen showed Walter the screen. "See? They're planning the final coup while I'm still technically president." Or, Walter suggested carefully, it's an opportunity to change the narrative. Karen scoffed. "What, show up and watch them vote me out? No thank you. What if you surprised them? What if, instead of fighting this, you found a way to be part of the solution?" Karen looked at her husband as if he'd suggested she fly to the moon. "You want me to surrender?" "I want you to transform," Walter replied. "There's a difference." Throughout the evening, Karen oscillated between fury, self-pity, and exhaustion. Walter ordered takeout, a rare occurrence in their household, and they ate in relative silence. Later, Karen found herself unable to sleep, replaying the pool incident in her mind and imagining the community meeting the next day. Around midnight, she slipped out of bed and went to her office. Instead of reaching for the HOA bylaws as usual, she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a photo album she hadn't looked at in years. Inside were pictures from when they'd first moved to Sycamore Heights, Karen planting flowers with Lisa Chen, a neighborhood barbecue, with Karen laughing alongside residents who now avoided her, Walter and Karen winning Best Decorated Home their first Christmas in the community. Page after page showed a happier version of herself, before the rules became her identity, before enforcement became her purpose. Karen closed the album, a strange feeling settling over her. It wasn't quite regret, not exactly nostalgia, but something in between, a recognition of what had been lost. Morning came too quickly. Karen woke to find Walter already dressed, sipping coffee in the kitchen. "I'm going to the meeting," he announced. "I hope you'll come too." Karen said nothing, watching him leave with a mixture of resentment and longing. After he